Everything started with a simple garden gnome. Not just any gnome, but Jeffrey, my backyard buddy and my first buy right after I moved into Westbrook Gardens, the fanciest condo around. As a software developer, I spent hours in front of my computer, and Jeffrey became my little escape from the digital world. But apparently, gnomes don't jibe with the sophistication that Mrs. Peterson, our homeowners association president, values so much. She didn't hesitate to send me a digital notice warning about the aesthetic inadequacy of my ceramic friend. Ironic, considering her garden boasts an abstract sculpture that looks more like a giant metal pretzel. At that moment, while watching Jeffrey smile innocently at me, I decided that this story wasn't going to end with a simple warning. If they wanted war, they were about to get one, on a scale no one could have imagined. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get more stories like this. The digital notification kept flashing on my phone screen, as if mocking both me and Jeffrey. Dear Mr. Bennett, your outdoor decor violates Section 7.3 of the regulations. That typical bureaucratic HOA text. As I read those words, my eyes kept darting between the email and Jeffrey, who just stayed there, smiling serenely in the afternoon sun. I decided to join the next virtual association meeting. There was Ashley Peterson, looking sharp in her gray blazer, running the video call like she was a Fortune 500 CEO. When it came time for me to speak, she barely let me finish my first sentence before launching into a speech about maintaining the aesthetic standards our residents expect. Richard Thompson, that retired guy who lives on the corner, just nodded silently along with every word Ashley said. The other participants at the meeting seemed more interested in their coffee cups than in hearing my argument about freedom of landscaping expression. Mr. Bennett, Ashley said, pronouncing my name as if it were an insult. Perhaps you don't understand that we're in one of the most prestigious communities in the area. Your decorative elements need to reflect that. I hung up from the meeting with my blood boiling. From my home office, I had a clear view of Ashley's garden. That monstrous, abstract metal piece she calls modern art cost more than my car. And Jeffrey, with his simple and sincere charm, was considered inappropriate? That's when I realized this wasn't about rules or aesthetics. It was about elitism dressed up as good taste. Well, if they wanted something grand, I was going to give them something truly monumental. I opened my laptop and started researching custom sculpture manufacturers. My online search for a manufacturer specializing in giant sculptures led me to an eccentric artist in Oregon who loved my crazy idea. During our planning video calls, he shared my excitement about creating something that would shake up Westbrook Gardens. While waiting for the giant gnome to be built, I began sowing seeds on social media. I created a page dedicated to Jeffrey, sharing daily photos of him from different angles with captions that subtly critiqued elitism in gated communities. To my surprise, the page quickly went viral. That's when Brittany Collins, an influencer with 500,000 followers, commented on one of my posts. She, too, lived in a controlling condo and identified with my cause. After a few message exchanges, we agreed to turn the arrival of the giant gnome into a memorable event. The delivery day was meticulously planned. Brittany brought her professional filming gear, including drones to catch every angle. The moving company arrived exactly at 9 a.m., and the crane started lifting Jeffrey, the Great, a 12-foot-tall version of my little original buddy. I streamed everything live on Instagram, narrating each moment as if it were a historic event. And, in a way, it was. Comments exploded on the screen while the giant gnome was strategically placed in my garden, its shadow falling over the fence that separated my property from Ashley's. The look on her face when she came out to see the commotion was priceless. Her jaw literally dropped when she saw Jeffrey, the Great, in all his fiberglass glory, smiling placidly at her precious abstract sculpture. My neighbors started coming out of their houses, some laughing, others speechless, with their phones in hand recording the moment. Richard Thompson, who usually kept quiet at HOA meetings, couldn't hold back a laugh. It's magnificently ridiculous, he exclaimed, snapping selfies with the gnome in the background. The live view counter skyrocketed, and the hashtags we created began trending. Brittany was already editing a reel that, I knew, would go viral in just a few hours. The Gnome War was officially declared. The inauguration event surpassed all expectations. Brittany didn't come alone. She brought along a crew of lifestyle and decor influencers, each with their own groups of followers. What started as a protest against arbitrary rules turned into a social media phenomenon. We set up a small photo area near Jeffrey, the Great, with professional lighting and themed props. Hundreds of people showed up, many dressed as gnomes. turning my garden into a true festival. Food trucks parked on the street, and someone even brought a DJ who started playing electronic music with samples of garden sounds. Ashley arrived at the peak of the party, her face red with indignation contrasting with her flawless suit. "This is a serious violation of the code of conduct," she shouted, trying to be heard above the music. Brittany, who was live streaming, pointed her camera directly at the confrontation. "Actually, Ashley," I replied, keeping my voice calm while dozens of phones filmed us. "There's no specific rule about a maximum size for garden decorations." I checked the regulations 3 times. The ensuing debate was epic. Ashley quoted clauses about decorum and aesthetic appropriateness, while I countered with points about personal expression and the subjectivity of art. Richard Thompson, to everyone's surprise, stepped forward with his tablet, showing old photos of the community. "You know, Ashley," he said in his gentle voice, "before your rules, this place had a lot more personality." Social media went into a frenzy. Memes started popping up instantly. Ashley's shocked face became a viral GIF, and someone even created an Instagram filter that put a gnome hat on people. The crowd began shouting, "Jeffrey, Jeffrey," and even some HOA board members couldn't hide their smiles. Ashley, realizing she was losing control, tried one last move. "You're going to get an astronomical fine for this." That's when Brittany, drawing on years of experience managing online crises, intervened. "It's funny how some people confuse power with authority," she commented live. "We're witnessing a classic example of how outdated rules can stifle creativity and personal expression." The comment went viral immediately. Sir Jeffrey, the great and free, the gnomes started trending on every social network. Interior design blogs began posting articles on the gnome revolution and how HOAs are killing suburban creativity. Ashley left the party defeated, but I knew that was only the beginning. As I watched the crowd snapping selfies with Jeffrey the Great, I realized we had created something bigger than just a protest. We had started a movement. The party went on until nightfall, with people sharing their own stories of run-ins with homeowners associations. Jeffrey the Great, lit up by colored spotlights, seemed to smile even wider, as if he knew his presence had forever changed our community's dynamics. And that was just the first act of this story. In the weeks following the inauguration, my life turned into a whirlwind of notifications and messages. The video of the confrontation with Ashley racked up millions of views, and journalists started contacting me for interviews. Architecture blogs published serious analyses about the role of art in residential spaces, using Jeffrey the Great as a case study. The impact on Westbrook Gardens' reputation was immediate, but not in the way Ashley had feared. Instead of scaring off potential buyers, our community became a point of interest. Real estate agents started mentioning the condo of the famous gnome in their ads, and property values surprisingly went up. I received an avalanche of support emails from people all over the country who were facing similar issues in their own communities. A sociology professor from a major university invited me to talk about creative resistance in the digital age. Brittany produced a short documentary on the case, which was selected for an independent film festival. Ashley tried to control the damage in her traditional way by sending out a formal statement to the residents about maintaining the standards that have brought us this far. But it was too late. The internet had already picked its side. The little original Jeffrey became a celebrity in his own right. Residents stopped by to take photos with him, some even bringing their own gnomes in solidarity. A local artist painted a mural on her garage depicting a parade of gnomes, and surprisingly, she didn't get any notice from the HOA. The traditional media caught wind of the story. A local newspaper ran a front-page story titled "Gnome War: How a Software Developer Revolutionized a Luxury Condo." I was interviewed on a regional morning TV show, while Ashley declined to share her side of the story. The most surreal moment was when a garden decor brand wanted to create a line of gnomes inspired by Jeffrey. I turned down the offer. Some things just have to stay authentic. Richard Thompson, who had rarely spoken at HOA meetings before, started circulating an online petition to review all the community's aesthetic rules. Maybe it's time to find a balance between preserving our property values and allowing personal expression, he wrote in our WhatsApp group. The online pressure was visibly affecting Ashley. In virtual HOA meetings, she appeared more tense, her authoritative tone replaced by a forced caution. Other board members began questioning her decisions openly, especially after a video of her complaining about a kid selling lemonade on the sidewalk went viral. Westbrook Gardens was changing. Small acts of creative rebellion began to show up. Wildflower gardens, doors painted in vibrant colors, and even a neighbor who installed a modern treehouse for his kids. The old uniformity was giving way to a livelier, more individual community. Jeffrey, the Great, stayed unruffled amid all the chaos, his calm smile seemingly saying, "I knew this would all happen." And as I watched these changes unfold, I began planning my next move. Because sometimes, to truly change things, you've got to think even bigger. The constant pressure from social media finally forced Ashley to call for an extraordinary hybrid HOA meeting. The community hall was packed, with dozens of residents in person and many more connected via Zoom. The tension was palpable. Ashley tried to keep her usual composure, but her voice trembled slightly when she proposed a controlled modernization of the rules. Her plan was to create an aesthetics approval committee that would evaluate exterior decor on a case-by-case basis. Essentially, it would replace arbitrary rules with an even more subjective system. Brittany, who now officially lived in the community after buying a house here, partly thanks to Jeffrey's fame, was live streaming the meeting on her channel. The live comments were ruthless, especially when Ashley suggested that I should be part of the committee, a transparent attempt to co-opt me. "With all due respect," I replied, keeping my camera on so everyone could see Jeffrey the Great outside the window behind me. "Adding more bureaucracy isn't the answer. We need fewer restrictions, not more control." To everyone's surprise, Richard Thompson stood up with a presentation on his tablet. He had compiled data from other communities that adopted more flexible policies, showing how architectural diversity boosted property values. "Our issue isn't with the gnomes," he concluded. "It's our stubborn resistance to change." The WhatsApp groups exploded during the meeting. Residents shared photos of their own violations that Ashley had overlooked over the years, including a permanent ice sculpture in the garden of one of her board friends. The meeting turned into a virtual battleground when one resident shared a document on screen revealing that Ashley had systematically denied decorative approvals for younger residents while quickly approving requests from older members. "This is defamation," Ashley protested, but the damage was done. In the live stream's comments, people began posting screenshots of old emails that showed the unequal treatment. The discussion went on for hours. Every time Ashley tried to regain control, more residents chimed in with their own stories of arbitrary rules. The turning point came when an elderly woman, connected via Zoom, admitted that she had given up on installing a butterfly garden after Ashley threatened her with fines. "Look at what we've become," I argued, "a place where even butterflies are considered inappropriate. Is that really what we want for our community?" The vote was overwhelming. Ashley's plan was shot down, and a new proposal to drastically simplify the aesthetic rules was approved. Richard Thompson was elected to lead a transition committee that included residents of all ages and lifestyles. Ashley was silent as the results were announced. Her face on Zoom showed a mix of anger and disbelief when she made one last emotional appeal about preserving our heritage. Someone shared a photo of the community from 20 years ago, with colorful gardens and diverse decorations. The gnome revolution was almost complete. While residents celebrated both online and in person, I began receiving private messages of support, even from people who used to be on Ashley's side. The winds of change were blowing strongly at Westbrook Gardens, and I already knew what my next move would be. Ashley's downfall came faster than anyone expected. After that disastrous meeting, she tried to cling to power by sending a series of defensive emails to the community. But every one of her messages was quickly dismantled on social media. The final blow came when a group of residents, led by Richard, launched a digital campaign called Westbrook Free. They even created a website documenting years of the HOA's arbitrary decisions, complete with video testimonials from former residents who had moved away because of the excessive restrictions. Brittany organized a series of live sessions where she interviewed experts in real estate law and urban planning. They explained how our old rules were more about social exclusion than preserving property values. The videos went viral beyond our community, inspiring similar movements in other condos. Ashley even tried one last move by proposing a vote of confidence in her leadership. It was a catastrophic mistake. The online vote broke participation records, with 92% of residents voting for her immediate ouster. Her resignation email came in at 11:47 p.m. that night, short and without any of the usual niceties. Richard then took over as interim president, and his first act was to create a transparent portal where every HOA decision would be posted and open for resident comments. The old aesthetic rules were suspended until a new code of conduct could be drafted. The change was immediate and obvious. A family painted their door a vibrant purple. Another installed an irrigation system that turned their garden into a mini rainbow on sunny afternoons. A group of teenagers even created a collaborative mural on the playground wall, with enthusiastic nods from the new management. But the real victory came when Richard approached me with an unusual proposal. "Travis," he said, adjusting his glasses with a mischievous grin, "how about we transform that abandoned common area into a community gnome garden?" The idea was brilliant. Every resident could contribute their own gnome, creating a sort of outdoor gallery. The project was unanimously approved at the very first meeting without Ashley, and residents even started planning theme events for the space. Social media exploded with the news. Gnome Garden started trending, and local artists volunteered to create exclusive pieces for the space. A nearby art school even proposed a program where students could exhibit their contemporary takes on garden gnomes. The most surprising part was an email I received from someone who had once been on Ashley's side. "You showed us that fighting for what you believe in can transform an entire community. Jeffrey would be proud." Attached was a photo of her smiling next to her newly installed gnome. The final meeting we had to finalize the new rules felt more like a celebration than a formal assembly. Richard proposed a virtual toast to the courage of one man and his gnome, who reminded us that a community is made up of people, not rules. Looking out of my home office window, I saw Jeffrey, the Great, now surrounded by wildflowers and little gnomes that neighbors had placed in solidarity. His serene smile now seemed even more meaningful. But something told me our story wasn't over yet. After all, there was still room in my garden for one more surprise. The installation of Jeffajeddon, my second giant 15-foot gnome, was a completely different event from the first. This time, it wasn't an act of rebellion, but a community celebration. I streamed everything live, of course, but now with the enthusiastic involvement of my neighbors. Brittany coordinated a team of drones to capture the moment the crane lifted the enormous structure. Jeffajeddon was positioned just right so that it looked like it was waving at Jeffrey the Great, creating a sort of silent dialogue between the two giant gnomes. Richard showed up dressed as a gnome, leading a group of kids who had choreographed a special routine for the occasion. Ashley's old garden, now owned by a young couple, was transformed into a natural amphitheater where people gathered to watch the installation. The online community that had grown around our story reacted with overwhelming enthusiasm. Jeffajeddon Day quickly became a trending topic, and people from other states drove for hours just to join the event. A food truck serving gnome food, basically miniature dishes, was such a hit that it decided to become a regular feature in our condo. The most touching moment was when a 12-year-old girl, the daughter of one of the residents, read a poem she'd written about how the gnomes had transformed our community. "In a world of gray walls, they brought color to our garden," she recited, drawing a few discreet tears from the adults. At the end of the day, as the sun set, the automatic lights installed around the gnomes turned on, creating a spectacular shadow show on the lawn. Residents stayed out late, sharing stories and planning future community events. Jeffrey, the little original gnome that started it all, earned a place of honor among his bigger brothers, a reminder that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest actions. Looking at my 3 gnomes under the stars, I realized that we had created something far greater than just a stand against resistance. We had built a true community. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get more stories like this. 6 months later, Westbrook Gardens became known as the Gnome Condo, a title we now wear with pride. People from all over the country make detours on their trips just to snap photos with Jeffrey, the Great, and Jeffajeddon. Our little original Jeffrey has even become a sort of local mascot, with his own Instagram account managed by a group of local teens. The community gnome garden blossomed beyond all expectations. Every piece tells a different story. There are handmade gnomes, some tech-savvy ones. One resident who's a programmer created one that flashes LED lights in sync with the sunset. And even a little one dedicated to Ashley, installed by Richard as a humorous reminder of how it all began. The old restrictive HOA rules were replaced with basic guidelines for safety and upkeep. The result? Our community has never been more valued. Real estate agents now highlight Westbrook Gardens' unique and welcoming culture in their listings. Brittany produced a final documentary about our story, which was shown at an outdoor cinema on the central lawn of the condo. Watching our journey on the big screen, from the first notification to the vibrant community we've become, brought many to tears. Recently, I received an unexpected email from Ashley. She's moved to another state, but admitted that our gnome revolution made her rethink many things. "Sometimes it takes a garden gnome to show you that you've been protecting the wrong things," she wrote. Today, sitting in my home office, I watch people snapping selfies with my giant gnomes through the window. Kids play freely in the colorful gardens, and residents stop to chat with each other, something that was rare back in the days of the old rules. Jeffrey, my first little buddy, still smiles in his honored spot. He seems happier than ever, as if he knew his presence sparked something special. Our story proved that sometimes the biggest impacts start with the smallest actions, or in this case, with the tiniest gnome. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get more stories like this.